Hello, my name is James Taylor.
And it's me, Maria Franzoni, back again.
You're listening to the SpeakersU Podcast. Welcome. Good to see you again, Maria. I could hear one of your little dogs just in the background there, just
I'm
before we
so
started
sorry.
recording there.
I'm
No,
so
it's
sorry.
nice. I
You'll
like
probably
it.
hear him. You'll hear him some more. It's very windy here, and this is the Labradoodle who's slightly crazy, and he feels that he has to save us from the murdering leaves that are flying around in the wind. So he goes out and he screams at them, and then he thinks, "Right, I have saved you," and this is his job, apparently.
So as we're recording this just now, we're coming into winter. It feels like we're coming into winter. I don't know. Are we still in autumn? We're probably still in autumn technically. If you're in the UK, but it feels like coming into winter.
I don't know, because the clocks have changed, so we're on winter time, right? And also, have you put your heating on, James?
I have. I just did that 2 days ago. I'd just come back. I'd been speaking somewhere, and I came back, and usually it's on Calvinist setting, and I finally had to make that setting. I actually put it on. So the first day it just went on there. But you're in the south, so you're kind of southerners. So you're kind of you like warmer climates anyway, don't you?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, my thermostat doesn't work anymore anyway. I'm at that age where 1 minute I'm cold, the next. I mean, I do Zoom calls, James, and I've got different layers on, and in the middle of a Zoom call, suddenly I'll whip a layer off, and I'm sure that there's somebody on the other side looking, waiting to see, oh my God, stop, woman, stop, because my thermostat just doesn't work anymore. Write in and let me know if you're having the same problem.
Write in and let us know. We can cover all kinds of things on the show. Actually, but the reason we're actually talking about temperature as well, I just come back from Athens. Our mutual friend, Jamil Qureshi, who was featured in your book, The Bookability Formula. So if you go and check out The Bookability Formula, Jamil kindly introduced me to one of his clients, Norton Rose Fulbright, wonderful legal firm based in the UK, but global firm. And so I just went and spoke at their event in Athens. And it was just lovely because it was a lovely kind of felt like it was end of the summer. The sun was coming down over the building with all the pillars, which I've got off now suddenly because of the Colosseum. That's the wrong city. But yeah, so it was quite nice just to kind of have that starting to kind of come into the thing. But I know one of the conversations we always have, Jamil and I always have, and this is going to be the focus of the episode for this week, is about setting fees, because he just messaged and he said he's been working every day since August something. So as we're now in, that's like 3 months every single day that he's been working. So he's kind of obviously found his sweet spot. So so I thought maybe we talk about setting fees and finding the kind of sweet spot. Not too cold.
Do you know
not
what?
Too hot.
He works so hard. He took some time out in August. He will have worked every single day before that as well. So, yes, he works very hard. And Jamil, if you're listening, put your fees up again. So, let's talk fees. Let's talk fees. It's a good topic.
So how much the first question I guess you get a lot from new clients that are coming in and they say, how much should I'm just getting started, how much should I charge for my keynote?
You see, that's such a good question, isn't it, really? Because it depends. And what I hate is when I'm in a group scenario, in a group setting, and somebody will say, give us some advice on setting fees, because you can't do that. It has to be an individual decision, really. And there's so many criteria, there's so many things. And I know you talk about this too. It's a topic that's close to your heart. And we talked about it when you were setting your fees. The thing is, you've got to be able to relate your fee to the value that you bring. It's not about the time, right? And I think one of the big mistakes most speakers make is that they focus on the time. I'm speaking for 20 minutes, I'm speaking for 45 minutes, I'm speaking for an hour. And they're trying to relate it to time. And it's not. It's all of your experience and expertise that you are now bundling up into that speech and you're delivering with an outcome to the client. And that's why it's so difficult, because you're trying to work out what is the value of this speech. And I imagine you had that too when you were trying to set your fees. It's like, how do I value this speech? The market ultimately will tell you if you've got it right or not.
Yeah, because I guess when you're meeting all those people at an event and you've got 4 different speakers coming up to you kind of saying, how much should I charge? They're all coming from different perspectives. They're all coming from different places in their careers. They're covering different topics, and that's obviously that can relate to the fees as well. They have different levels of experience, different authority, different credibility. So there's a lot of things. So what would you say when you have that conversation? What are the key things that make up the fee? what are the key components that determine if you get a sense that I'm not too hot, I'm not too cold when it comes to that fee level?
Yeah, there's sort of bands really, and it depends which market you're in. I mean, if you're in the education market, that your fees are going to be very different than if you're speaking in the corporate market. If you're selling from stage, you're quite likely not to be charging, and you're going to be making your money from the products and services you're selling. So it does depend. If you're working in government or in services like NHS, etc., you're going to be charging different than if you're working, for banks and financial services. It does vary. But there are sort of like starting points. If you're speaking in schools, it's in the hundreds rather than in the thousands, although there are speakers who will achieve thousands because they will be working and speaking to the teachers, the head teachers, and at a higher level or at higher education. If you're working with corporates and businesses, you're probably going to be charging four figures or more. If you're working small, medium organisations, it is probably lower end four figures. So it really does depend on the industry that you're in. It depends on the topic that you talk about. As you know, innovation carries a higher fee than creativity. Right, you'll have experienced that, unless it's super definitely. Creativity, of course, James, which is even more expensive. Yeah, so
make up your own term, and then you get to set your own fees.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, so there's all of those factors plus location, markets, in terms of not only the market you're in speaking at, but also where you're speaking. The fees are much higher in the US than they are in the UK. They're higher in the Middle East. They're higher when you're speaking for international organisations than if you're speaking locally. So there's so many varying factors, and that's why it's so difficult to give an answer that is just right. That's your number.
Yeah, and actually we should probably do some future episodes talking about some of the different markets, because as you say, the US market is so different from the UK or the European market or the Middle East market. Even within the Middle East, there's gradations between the Saudi market and the UAE market and the Oman market or the Australian market. I actually find there's also kind of supply and demand thing that goes on as well. So Australia has just got so many great speakers. And so some of my Australian friends, they just say it's actually really hard to push your fees among a certain level because there seems no lack of speakers in that market, where other markets I know where there's not so many kind of speakers that are of certain quality, and so those speakers are there and are doing well. They can charge a little bit of a premium as well.
Absolutely, totally agree with you, and it is a problem. Same in the UK, it's hard to really raise your fees. But again, it's sort of which events are you going after? That's an important thing to be thinking about. Which clients you're going after? What's the value that you deliver? What's your profile as well? Your profile will set a fee. Somebody who's coming out of a position and has been the CEO of a Fortune 100 company is going to have a very different fee to somebody who's been a small business entrepreneur, even if they're speaking on the same topic.
Which industries would you say pay the best? Who, when you quote used to quote as a bureau owner, you quote a high fee for someone, they just didn't really bat an eyelid. It wasn't it was all. I guess it's all relative to different industries as well. But which industries would you say were the highest paying industries for speakers?
Do you know, it varies really, because it's very difficult to generalise because it varies client by client. I mean, some of the biggest brands, the biggest names, you will have experienced this, and I won't mention any names because we don't want to have anybody doing us for slander, but some of the biggest names on the planet are the tightest, right?
Absolutely.
And they're more or less saying, well, I'm going to pay very little because you're going to want to have the testimonial from our brand. And it's great exposure and all this. I hate this whole exposure term. It just makes me think of flashes. But so it's difficult to say. But usually, my experience was that the more senior the audience, the better the budgets. But then again, of course, their criteria was higher in terms of what they're looking for. The larger the audience, it doesn't necessarily mean the better the budgets. Sometimes the smaller groups would have that. As a bureau, what I liked to do and what we used to do was work very much on the internal events, not just the external events, and not just the client-facing events or the annual conference that I would consider external because you would take it out of the company into a different venue. I used to like doing the internal events for the sort of department heads and the senior people or boardroom advisory type level events, where it's a different topic and often strategic as a topic.
Yeah.
I don't know if you found that. Have you found that difference?
Yeah. One of the first questions I tend to ask, and sometimes they'll put it on the form when they fill in the form for inquiring about me, is where is the event being held?
Yeah.
And in Dubai, I know if the gradations of the hotels. So if they're booking something at the Four Seasons, that's a very different type of thing as if they're booking something at one of the Hiltons, for example. There's nothing wrong with Hilton. Hilton's a client of mine. I love Hilton. I stay at Hilton's. But you can almost see also within the big four accounting and audit firms, they kind of go for certain types of venues where they go for, and you could almost sense like, I know this is this kind of fee level, whereas opposed to this is this fee level, because their bosses want a really nice hotel for some retreat type event, where the general management are going to go to some okay hotel, and so you kind of get to sense about what is the overall budget for the event at the same time.
Oh, sneaky. Although, I mean, you shouldn't really technically be changing your fee based on what they're spending on the hotel. But I can see where you'd be more comfortable and more confident not having to negotiate.
So this is another question that comes up, and people have different feelings on this, I guess, as well. But should a speaker publish their fees on their website, or make them more publicly available? You can find their fees. I know you can go online, you can see different bureaus have different fee levels and different speakers and things. But should you be so overt as that as a speaker by actually having on your website, this is my fee?
I'm going to turn this round on you, James. Have you published your fees?
No.
No. And that would be my answer, no. And the reason, bureaus do publish fees, by the way, but they publish a range. So if you're publishing a range, I haven't got a problem with that. But I think in doing so, you run the risk that somebody's going to want to pay the lower range. The challenge is that when you're publishing fees, there's a fee for the country that you're speaking in. There's a fee for travelling 8 hours long haul. There's going to be a fee for virtual. There's going to be a fee for if you're doing a speech plus a workshop plus a Q&A plus the VIP meeting, etc., etc. Fees are going to vary dramatically. And if you're publishing fees, you run the risk that people are going to try and negotiate you down to the lowest fee.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Someone once said to me, "What do you charge?" And I said, "I speak for free. I charge you for having to leave my home and get on a plane, do all the other things. You know, I love speaking, but you're taking time away from your families. Often, I would say this within other type people that have got other jobs as well as they're speaking. They're having to make a calculation. If I take those 3 days out of my life, that is time I can't work on that book, or I can't do that consulting engagement, or I can't do something else. So you're also seeing those. You kind of sometimes factoring those things in your head if you're a certain type of speaker, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. So yeah, I as I said, I wouldn't publish fees on a website. I don't think it's a good idea. And sometimes I see speakers publishing like their online course fee on a website or a lower price product, and again you're sort of anchoring people on a lower rate. You want to have a discussion. You want to have a discussion about availability and fee. You want to talk about the event, because there will be times that you may actually be flexible if there's something that's of value for you that is more important than necessarily speaking at the event.
One thing I wondered early on, someone once said to me, you should have on your website your videos and your images. It should look like a $50,000 speaker. That's what she was saying to me. You want to look like that $50,000 speaker, and that's what I tried. I spent money on great videos and photography and all the other kind of things as well. But then it also kind of worked against me a little bit at the start when I was just getting started, because people would think I was, because they saw me, a lot of the photography I would put out is on bigger stages, where actually a lot of the stuff I do is smaller rooms, like 150 people, 150 leaders in an organization. But they assumed, because of the photography and the videos that were up there, oh, well, this person only speaks to like 3,000, people in a room, and the fee is going to be this kind of thing. And sometimes they get a surprise, a good surprise for them, maybe not for me, but a good surprise for them in terms of what my fee level actually is as well, because they have assumed that I'm at a certain different level of fees.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the danger with showreels, that you've got to make sure that you're showing what you want to be booked for, and you've got to show a variety if you're doing a variety. And a lot of people, when they're creating showreels, don't necessarily have the footage of where they want to be speaking. They have the footage of where they've been able to get footage, because so many times you're told, you can't record here, or there's some reason why they're not recording. So you might only have footage of you running workshops when actually you want to be on a stage. So the showreel footage has got to show what you do, and so you probably need to have a variety, don't you? And yes, I can see. I tell people to make sure that their website looks more expensive than they are, for sure. If you're charging $5,000, it should look like a $10,000 website. If you're charging your fees, let's not give away your fees. We haven't published them so that we won't announce them. But I can understand when you're starting out that people would have assumed, can't afford James. But you're not that bad.
No. So let's talk about maybe another problem. So someone's been speaking for a while. They're doing fine. They're getting bookings. They're speaking, and now they've decided, actually they're maybe a little bit too busy, or they've got something's just come out and they want to kind of raise their fees. How do you think about setting your fees and increasing those fees? When is the right time to do that? What questions should they be asking themselves, or their bureau partners or other people around them, to know when is the right stage to increase their fees, and what level they should increase their fees to?
Yeah, I find that if you've had no pushback for a while, maybe is this a question for you, James? Are you looking to raise your fees? If you haven't had pushback, sorry. Say again?
I'm always looking to raise my fees.
You probably should. I don't know what you're at now. We'll have to have a chat offline after this. So the thing is, if you've been charging and you've not had pushback. In fact, we talked about this on another podcast, didn't we? That somebody said to you that. What did they say to you? That if you 70% of the time they were saying yes, your fee was too low and you should put it up. Was that what you were told?
Yeah, that was Rob Waldo-Waldman, a great speaker. Your wingman is his catchphrase. He said to me, I think I said I'm closing 75% of my inquiries are coming in, or the discovery calls, and I was feeling very good about that. And he said, well, that's probably because your fee is too low. And you should be looking to kind of actually reduce that close rate, but increase your fees over time. And that was a real wake up call to me. And then I think there was a timing, how you communicate the fees increasing with bureau partners, how you feel psychologically comfortable. I was talking last night. I was at a dinner last night, and there was a gentleman sitting next to me who was like a financial advisor, and I actually said really what he is a financial coach, because he has to work with people to get their psychology around their value and money. And we've grown up in different cultures, different backgrounds. We think about money in slightly different ways, and making that transition from one fee band to another fee band, that can be am I never going to get booked again? I mean, that's, for me as a speaker, that's kind of what goes on in my head.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I sort of say, if you've done 10 or 12 gigs in a row and nobody's pushed back, definitely put your fee up. In your, the 75% rule, I think, is a good one. You probably should be losing about 50% of them, really, of your inquiries for fee. And then people will come back. But of course, people starting out are not going to want to do that. When you're starting out, you can't be doing that, because you need to get out there, you need the reps, you need the testimonials. So this is only when you've got to a certain stage and you're established and you've got enough business. As soon as you put your fee up, you will probably lose more. You'll probably have a reduction in your number of bookings. And in terms of how much to put it up, it depends what you're starting from, right? Because if you say a percentage, if you're starting from 2,000 and we say 10%, that's too low. You probably go to 2,500. But if you say 10% on a 50,000 fee, it's a 5,000 increase. So it depends where you're starting from in terms of how much to put it up. But certainly, if you're in sort of like 2,000-3,000, I would go up in increments of 500 at a time. Do you announce it? No. To new clients, you just tell them your new fees as if they've always been the fees. That's the case. With bureaus, there is a challenge, because most bureaus are working in advance with clients, so they may well have quoted your fees already. So what I used to say when a speaker came to me and said, look, Maria, I'm putting my fees up, I say, well, could you honour any inquiries I've already got out where I've put you forward at your current rate, so that I don't lose face, because that's really embarrassing as a bureau if you've done the sale and suddenly you've got to then go back and say, well, actually, I quoted this fee, it's now that fee. And speakers don't tend to have a problem with that, and bureaus haven't got a problem. The bureau's on commission. They make more if you raise your fee, so it's all good.
Commissions. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about commissions. We're going to talk about different rates for virtual and in-person, different ways of doing it as well. But first, a little word from our sponsors.
Why do some speakers get booked again and again, while others struggle to secure even one paid engagement? In the bookability formula, Maria Franzoni, former International Speaker Bureau owner, reveals what the top 1% most booked speakers do differently. She analyzed years of bureau data and discovered that just 1% of her roster generated 80% of the bookings. In this book, Maria shares the clear, proven framework any speaker can use to become commercially and consistently bookable. Get your copy now at mariafranzoni.me or alternatively on Amazon.
Do you dream of stepping on stage and being paid big, $10,000, $50,000, or even more for just one keynote? If you're ready to stop speaking for free or low fees and build a speaking business that generates real income, listen closely. Introducing the 7-Figure Speaker Program with James Taylor. He's trained hundreds of speakers to go from small stages to commanding big fees, teaching you the full system. Marketing, sales, craft, profitability. You'll get insider templates, email swipe copy, checklists, everything you need to book more gigs, raise your rates, win speaker bureau deals, and build evergreen revenue streams. If you want the strategy and tactics to build a global speaking business faster than you thought possible, this is your moment. Go to SpeakersU.com and get started today. The stage is ready for you.
Okay, welcome back. So we have this great thing now, post-pandemic or during the pandemic, of virtual fees as well. So when a speaker's coming to you, and we earlier were speaking about different fees, but you can obviously have different fees for virtual based upon where you are, if it's in your own country or state, for example, in the US, and then you have the kind of international fees as well. When you're kind of guiding a speaker to think about the kind of menu of options that they can offer a client for virtual and international, how do you think about them? Should the international be like twice the price of the local fee that they're doing? Should virtual be half the price of that?
So I actually wrote an entire newsletter on this. I think it was one of my first on LinkedIn, actually, because I don't think there are any rules around virtual. I think you can do whatever you like. In the pandemic, oh God, I can't believe we've mentioned it twice. People slashed their fees, which was a mistake. But they did because they were scared, and we all get it. It was horrible. But in reality, you're delivering the same value, and in many cases, you're delivering more value because you're reaching more people. So my view on virtual is it's a strategic decision. What do you want to achieve from virtual? There are people who would rather do virtual than travel. So then I say, well, make it a slightly lower fee, make it 80% of your in-person fee, because then people are more likely to choose it if you don't want to travel. And there are those who hate virtual, so either don't offer it or charge extra. So I think it's a strategic decision personally. How have you set yours?
Yeah, we've actually just changed ours recently. I used to have the virtual fee was a little bit under the in-person fee. Local in the let's say that I'm in the UK just now, so it was a little bit under the UK fee. Now it's the same as the UK fee. They're obviously saving on the travel side as well. But even then, I would say there's movement within that, because what I'm finding now, and especially this is the case with virtual, yes, you still get the inquiries to do the 45-minute keynote. But one of my most popular ones I get for virtual, I just did one last week, I've got another one coming up in a couple of weeks' time, is where they ask you to do a blend. So actually that virtual ends up being 2 hours, because you're doing a mixture between keynote and interactive style. And that, not everyone likes that in terms of actually how to do that, because there's a lot of thought you have to go into to keep an engagement really high. We just did one the other day where it was part of continuing credits for an industry association. So we have to ensure that we're doing like polling every 15 minutes, and a certain percentage of the people complete that polling. So in some ways, the virtual becomes harder because there's so many more things you're having to go through. You're not just kind of turning up and delivering it. There's different ones there. I would say on the international one, and this is just my view, and not everyone agrees with me on this one. I love speaking internationally. I love speaking to global audience. I love visiting new places. So my international fee is not like crazily higher than the in-person. It's not double the fee, let's say, than if I was doing one in Europe. And that's simply because I actually quite enjoy traveling and speaking to different audiences. But I know some of my friends in the US, they will significantly increase their fees. In fact, I know one speaker who doesn't even speak outside of California unless it's really, really high fee. He just doesn't want to do that because he's got younger children. He's at a different point in his speaking career.
Yeah, and I think it changes. I think these things change, but I do think you do need to be strategic about your pricing. So, and the virtual one is the easy one to be strategic. And I totally agree with you. It's a lot harder, and it's absolutely exhausting because you don't get anything back from the screen. Really, it's tough. It's really tough. So, well done, you. 2 hours. Yikes.
Where I would say that virtuals are good, and this is what I did in the pandemic period. It's the last time we're going to say this word, pandemic. But during that period, I was the busiest I've ever been. So I was doing well over 100 presentations a year. I was like 2 or 3 a day. You're doing like 3 in the morning because you were in Asia and all these kind of things. Where it was very useful for me to do virtuals is I was able to collect logos as a speaker much quicker than if I'm doing stuff in person. So suddenly I was able to speak to some really big brands virtually that maybe it wouldn't have necessarily been possible for me to speak to them maybe in person, or a different opportunity would have presented itself. So it was actually a really good way of doing your hours and getting up some of those brands. And then when the world started to open up, I was able to use those brands to say, hey, I've actually already spoken for your virtual event. And it was a really good way of testing things. But I think we're in a different point. I mean, I don't know what the average is now. I would say 10% of what I do now is virtual. I don't know what you're seeing for your speakers.
What I'm seeing is that virtual seems to be like on a Monday and a Friday, and it seems to be more interactive and workshopy, and the sort of the keynote speeches, conference speeches tend to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is actually great because you can sort of plan your diary out in that way. So it varies person to person, because there are speakers who just do virtual, and there are those speakers who are really happy to mix the two up. But we mentioned Jamil at the beginning, and Jamil will be doing an in-person and a virtual on the same day, so he's the exception to the rule, of course, because he can't help himself.
Yeah. I can't do that because I do all my virtuals from here in the studio. We've got a green screen studio, and I like having everything, all my screens and everything. The idea of doing it in a hotel with maybe dodgy Wi-Fi is just there's too much fear for me to do that. That freaks me out a little bit.
Take a risk. He likes to take a risk. But he makes sure it works, so it's all good. So how are we going to summarize?
Sorry. There's one final question I want for you, and this is very self-indulgent from me. I have traditionally in my fees, I have my rate card. I have it described as net of bureau commissions, because if I'm sending it to a bureau, so I quote a fee, and then they put on their percentage. We're going to do a future episode on bureaus, just talking about bureaus. But I'm wondering if that's the best thing to be doing. Whether now we're talking about with bureaus now, whether the fee should be an all-in fee, so they take their commission off the top, or whether I should be quoting a net of bureau commissions. And if I get pushback from a speaker gets pushback from a client or a bureau about fees, how do you feel about discounting the fees?
Oh my God, are you just sworn? Can we put a disclaimer on this episode? Because the D word is a swear word. No discounting. Never, never. You can negotiate, James. But coming back to your net of bureau commissions, that's a big topic that we probably ought to go a bit deeper into in the bureau episode that we're going to do. But the problem you've got there is that you could find yourself competing with bureaus on price. Because if you're saying your fees, let's say you're saying your fees 15,000 net of commission, and one bureau is putting on that $5,000, so they're now quoting at 20,000, and another bureau is putting on 7,500, they're quoting at 22,500, and then what are you quoting? Are you quoting at 15? We've now got 3 different rates out there. So I've got some quite strong views about fee integrity, which I know not everybody agrees with. Many speakers don't agree with me, many bureaus don't agree with me. So we might have to look at that. So do you want to tackle fee integrity, or do you want to tackle discounts? You've upset me by swearing.
I think what we should do is, if someone's listening or watching this just now, make sure you subscribe to the SpeakersU podcast on Spotify or Apple podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, or we can even watch some of these things on YouTube as well, the show. And we're going to do a future episode. The next episode that we will do will be on bureaus, and we're going to go really deep on bureaus, because I know it's one of the most common questions I'm sure you get. I get a lot from other speakers as well about relationship with bureaus. How do you build relationship? Should I be with a bureau? All those kind of questions, commissions. So let's park that one for now, and let's maybe do that in the future one. But on that D word that shall never be mentioned.
No, never discount. Yeah.
How do you do it?
I have no problem with people negotiating. Now, the difference between a negotiating and a discount is you're just reducing the price, and that's it. Whereas with a negotiation, you're saying, well, if I do reduce my price because you can't pay this fee, what can you do to make up for it? What can you offer me in return? And I always say to a speaker, when I work with them, have a list of what's valuable to you. When it happens that a client comes to you, your fee's £10,000 and they've only got 7,500, you're not going to say, oh, right, I'll cave, I'll reduce 2.5K for you because because it's a Wednesday. You're not going to do that. That seems really, because then that gives no value to your real fee. Where did it come from? Did you just pluck it out of the air? What you would be saying is, look, I'd like to do this event. Well, how can we make this work? What can you offer me? These are the things that are of value to me, that are important. And it could be all sorts of things. It could be raw footage from the event, unedited raw footage, which will have value. It could be a whole photography session. It could be some press and PR, which their press team could organise for you. It could be meetings with some of their senior management. It could be introductions to other people in the organisation running events, all sorts, whatever it's of value. It might be that, it's a destination that you would like to take your wife and kids to. So you say, well, after the event, I'd like you to then cover the costs of my wife and kids coming out, and we'll spend a week and we'll have a holiday. So it's then becomes a negotiation rather than a discount. And it's amazing how clients can put some of these other things into place for you because they don't come out of the speaking budget. And there are situations where a client has a product or service that is of value to you. So I've negotiated all sorts of weird things, James. I had a speaker who was speaking for a gambling company, and we negotiated gambling chips of several £1,000s. And he had a blast. Lost a lot, but had the best time ever because he would never, ever have put his own money into it. Do you know what I mean? I've had people who have negotiated products, so electronic goods or lease of a car or clothing or services. So there's lots of things you can do where you negotiate rather than discount. So let's never use that word again.
It shall forth be banned from this show. You shall never hear the D word ever again. Maria, I think it's been a great episode. Loads of great things as well. Any kind of final parting wisdom from you in terms of setting fees? What would you say? So someone's sitting there now that they've been hearing this conversation.
Yeah, we should be doing little tips, shouldn't we, on setting fees? Yeah, so have a look on Speaker Bureau websites at speakers who are talking on your topic, and see where the gaps are if you're starting out, so that you could sneak in there at either a lower fee so that you're an alternative to somebody who's higher, or if you are of the same level as some of the other speakers, you can then match that level, that range. So it's quite useful to go looking, because a lot of speaker bureaus list the fees, and that's quite helpful. Yeah,
I would say my tip for that is actually something I learned from Josh Linkner, speaker, where he had this thing, I can't remember what he called it again, where 7 different factors of it that make up a speaker. And he said, just go through a bureau, like you say, a bureau website, find those 5 main competitors in your area, and then just like, how do they score in terms of video, their showreel quality? How do they show in terms of relevance? All these 7 different factors, and then you will start to see the gaps. So you'll start to see, oh, actually, this person, these people, no one really delivers a workshop that kind of link to the keynote. So maybe that's my thing. My thing is coming, I'm going to do this more interactive style. Or most of the videos are really old here, so maybe I'm going to do that. Or most of the photography is kind of like not really there. Or I've just noticed that most of these people are speaking for these industries, but these are the other industries they don't seem to be focused on so much. So you can find, what was that? Is it the blue ocean strategy? You can do a little bit of kind of blue ocean strategy on that as well.
Brilliant. Love a bit of blue ocean strategy. Fantastic.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for listening, watching wherever you are in the world today. My name is James Taylor.
And I'm Maria Franzoni.
And you'll be listening to the SpeakersU Podcast. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Imagine stepping onto stages around the world, sharing your message, inspiring thousands, and getting paid what you deserve. If you're a coach, author, thought leader, or consultant ready to build a global speaking career, listen up. Introducing the International Speakers Summit with James Taylor, where 150-plus pro speakers, trainers, and business coaches reveal the exact strategies behind launching, growing, and monetizing an international speaking business. You'll learn storytelling that moves, mindset shifts that scale, how to package and price your talks, and even get video, audio downloads, workbooks, and bonus content. All of this for just $97 with the VIP Pass. Over 100 hours of premium, actionable content. Ignite your stage presence, amplify your voice, dominate the speaker marketplace. Go to SpeakersU.com and unlock your International Speakers Summit Pass today, because the world is waiting to hear you.